Coming up on Transformers University, it's time to get wrecked in London. Well, maybe not in London, but we're heading to the UK for some Marvel UK classics featuring everyone's favorite Autobot wrecking team. Right now on Transformers University.
Welcome to Transformers University, brought to you by TFU.INFO. Wait and see. From toys and comics, cartoons to the screen, we'll dive into the history no one of these. Transformers University, brought to you by TFU.INFO. Info, where the stories unfold, the legends grow with the owner, operator, Mad Anthony. Transformers University, it's the place to be. Autobots and Decepticons, battles and lore. Every twist and turn, we've got the score. From Cybertron's depths to the Earth's shore, it meets the eye and so much by TFU.INFO. Info, where the stories unfold, the legends grow with the owner, operator, Mad Anthony. Transformers University, it's the place to be. It's the place to be. Zoom in, transform, and roll out with us at Transformers University. It's a must.
Well, my friend, and welcome to episode number 154 of Transformers University. I am your host, Anthony Brucali, owner, operator, madman behind TFU.INFO, the website, the toy archive, this podcast, TFU News and Views podcast, and oh, so much more. And I want to welcome you back to another comic episode of Transformers University. It's been a while since we've done Marvel UK, and I'm actually really happy to do this set of stories. We're going to cover Marvel UK issues 164 through 173, I believe. Double check that number. That is correct, 173. So we'll be talking a whole bunch of stories featuring mostly Ultra Magnus and the Wreckers, and some really, really great stuff here, and stuff that is actually even more relevant today in 2025 than it was about a year and a half ago. So we'll talk about that as we get into the episode. But first, I do want to thank the folks on our Patreon, patreon.com/TFUInfo, all one word. If you are not signed up over there, please swing on by. It's the easiest, quickest, and really most affordable way to help us out at TFU.INFO. As for as little as $1 a month, you can sign up and be a paid member, get to hear this episode and all of our podcasts at least one day early. You also get in on polls and exclusive posts and some exclusive content that has been over there for a while. My Seven Figures podcast and a couple other deep looks that are now kind of old news, but interesting to look at prior to things actually happening in the real world. So do check those out. Patreon.com/TFUInfo. Once again, all one word. And if you sign up at the senior or super senior level, you get your name read on every episode of the podcast. So I want to thank our seniors and up, and actually, as of right now, we only have super seniors. We do not have any seniors, but I want to give a shout out to our super seniors, Alex Mendoza, Eric Sire, John Forex Levengood, Jay Soups, Paul Heel, Rob Gerbracht, and Sean Hamilton. Thank you all for being such incredible supporters of this show, the website, the toy archive, and everything else. And finally, if you want to hang out with me, I know I used to say it was over on the Bird site, over on Twitter. I have since pretty much left Twitter. It's not that I don't post there. I really try not to. I use it more for direct messaging for some folks who I do know that still hang out there. But what I do, where I do hang out these days is at Blue Sky, and that is TFUInfo, all one word, .bsky.social. And you can catch me there. It's where I post all of my thoughts, all of my news, all the things I think are interesting going on in the world of Transformers and in other places too. Not just Transformers, toy collecting, some occasionally some Major League Baseball stuff, occasionally some other just weird, nerdy, fun stuff, heavy metal stuff. It really is a good place just to kind of get a pulse on the things I am into. Now, one of the things I've really gotten into, especially doing this podcast, is Marvel UK. And we're going to get into these issues right now. So it's the first time back to Marvel UK in a while. And these events take place between Marvel US issues 40 and 41. And we're going to start with issue number 164, City of Fear. This one's written by Simon Furman with art by Dan Reed. Colors with a U by Ewan Peters, letters by Annie Half a Cree, Half a Skrull, and the cover also by Dan Reed, which features Ultra Magnus and the Sparklers, or as they're known in the West, the Sparkabots, being watched by robot skeleton monsters. What are they? Well, you're about to find out. On Cybertron, in the city of Kalis, we find that the city is burnt out and just a dangerous place to be, a husk of its former self. We meet a random Autobot to be named later who gets killed by a zombie. On Earth, Ultra Magnus and the Sparklers take a portal back to Cybertron and end up in Kalis. They're supposed to meet Zaron, or as they call him in Transformers 1, XAA-Ron, and the Wreckers. He's supposed to meet Zaron and the Wreckers, but they are not there. But Sizzle finds some old corpses with new laser damage, and we see some empties. Those are like not aligned Transformers on Cybertron. We see some empties who flee. The Autobots transform and drive to the outskirts on the border of Tyrest. Now, you might remember that name if you're an IDW reader. Tyrest is actually a place and not necessarily a person. I know in the comic it is Chief Justice Tyrest that is mentioned a whole bunch in those future IDW books that we'll cover one day. But Tyrest is a quadrant on Cybertron in this part of Transformers continuity. It is a place. The Autobots get attacked by Decepticons and end up capturing Flywheels. He tells them that the dead have risen in Kalis, and then a hand comes out from the ground, and that is where the issue ends. And as you know, if you've been with us before on these Marvel UK books, these are much shorter comics than US comics, so they're actually weekly, and they are about half the content of a US book. So every 2 issues is pretty much a story here. So we'll jump to issue 165, City of Fear, Part 2. Same creative team, and this one features a cover where Ultra Magnus is fighting a zombie. And we jump right into it. The Autobots and Flywheels are surrounded, and they fight some zombies. Flywheels uses his tank mode to blast an opening, and the Sparklers use their vehicle mode to burn the zombies. Ultra Magnus realized that the zombies are Autobots and orders the rest of the Autobots to cease fire. The zombie is about to bite Ultra Magnus's head off when he is saved by Flywheels, of all people. The Autobots and Flywheels try to figure out what is controlling the zombies. No brain modules, so it must be some sort of radio signal. So they set out to find the transmitter. And they head to the Baird beaming transmitter. Flywheels, in the process of this, wants his gun back, and Ultra Magnus gives it to him. Ultra Magnus jams the signal, like in Spaceballs, but the zombies sneak up on him. Flywheels, once again, shoots the zombie, saving Ultra Magnus, and Flywheels tells Ultra Magnus that he owes him one, and he intends to collect on it. Sparklers join up with Ultra Magnus and Flywheels, and Ultra Magnus realizes that the signal is coming from below the surface. And that's where the story ends. It's a neat little story, and there's some interesting history later on with the Autobot to be named later, because he was named twice. Both times in the letters page of the UK book. Now, if you're not familiar with the letters page of the UK book, that is usually hosted by a Transformers character who replies to letters in his own unique voice. So when Grimlock was running the letters page, he said that this Autobot that was killed right at the beginning of this story was named Chuffer. Dreadwind, when he was running the letters page, named him Steamer. Finally, there's another letters page that acknowledges the confusion and says it doesn't matter. TF Wiki, for all intents and purposes, has gone with Chuffer. So if you search Chuffer, Chuffer, like Huffer, but with a C in the front, you'll find Chuffer's page. Now that'll take us to the next story we're going to cover, starting in issue 166, Legion of the Lost, Part 1. Written by Simon Furman with pencils by Jeff Anderson.
I hope it feels so good to be right. There's nothing more exhilarating than pointing out the shortcomings of others, is there?
Inks by Dave Elliott, letters by Tom Frame, colors with a U by Ewan Peters, and a cover by Lee Sullivan, which features Springer and Topspin witnessing a mushroom cloud with a new face inside of it. I wonder who this could be. So we find someone is watching Ultra Magnus and the Sparklers and Flywheels. This is our recap, kind of. And this person is also holding Zaron, XAA-Ron, prisoner. In this recap, where it's explained that there was an explosion 3 weeks ago. We flash back to Kahless 3 weeks ago and the explosion. Zaron reveals to the Wreckers that Kahless was built on top of Megatron's engines that were built to move Cybertron. This goes all the way back to the very first issue of the Transformers comic, how Megatron had designed engines to steer Cybertron through space and kind of make it a warship to travel the galaxy. From there, zombies climb out from under the base, and we find that Impactor, the former leader of the Wreckers, is among them. We move on to issue 167, Legion of the Lost, Part 2. Same team except for the letterer. Letterer this time is Annie, half a Kree, half a Skrull. Cover by Jerry Paris, which features a zombie Impactor about to kill Springer, the current leader of the Wreckers. The Wreckers and Zaron try to talk to Impactor and get him not to attack. He stops because Flame arrives. Now, who is Flame? Flame is an Autobot. And he reveals that he is behind the explosion and the zombies. I should say he is an Autobot scientist. He captures Zaron and the Wreckers, and then we get another flashback within this flashback. Flame reveals he has plans to restart Megatron's engines. He blames Zaron for his being kicked out of the Iacon Academy of Science and Technology. I hear their tuition is really, really reasonable, surprisingly. And we flash ahead to the present time where Flame orders a zombie Impactor to guard the Wreckers as prisoners. He plans to fire the engine, and Zaron knows it will destroy the planet. Flame sees Ultra Magnus and company arrive on the surface. In the cell, Springer uses his leaping ability, something we don't see that often, to fly through one of the air vents in the cell. But Zombie Impactor grabs onto him and the two fight. As they're fighting, Impactor starts to remember his living self, and Springer is able to take the confusion as a way to escape. That wraps up Legion of the Lost. We do get to meet the mysterious face in the mushroom cloud. His name is Flame. If you're following the toy line, in the most recent special edition toys that they did for comic series toys, there was a 2-pack of Zaron and Flame, and this is where we meet Flame. And Flame has a big part in the next 2 issues, a story called Meltdown. And we start with issue 168, Meltdown Part 1, written by Simon Furman, art by Robin Smith, letters by Glib, which is a gentleman by the name of Gary Gilbert. We've talked about him in previous episodes. And Colors with a U by Ewan Peters. Cover by Jerry Paris. It's Flame's hand crushing Ultra Magnus, Zaron, Springer, and Broadside. We begin with Flame's computer giving us a status update. And it's this is a neat technique by Furman here, because not only is the status update a way to recap the story, but it's a way to leap the story ahead faster by moving pieces forward and explaining where they were. So Springer is meeting up with Ultra Magnus on the surface, with Ultra Magnus and his accomplices, we'll call them, the Sparklers. They head below via a vent. We find that Flywheels is flying to find backup. The Wreckers are still in prison and contained, and XAA-Ron, Zaron, is headed to the control room, and we find out the engines will fire in 4.8 breams. Now, if you're a astute reader of the comic, 1 bream is equal to 8.35 minutes, so 4.86 breams times 8.35 minutes is about 40 and a half minutes, so about 40 minutes and 30 somewhat seconds, a little more than that. So that's what we got, about 40 minutes before the explosion. And then we get this great meltdown splash page, and Flame is celebrating the fusion reactor being ready soon.
When will then be now? Soon.
Ultra Magnus, Springer, and the Sparklers continue through the tunnels where the Wreckers are fighting zombies. Broadside is about to die. Only Zombie Impactor saves him. Broadside shot the food.
Eat your food, don't shoot it.
Broadside finds the Wreckers' weapons. Zaron finds Flame and tries to talk him out of his plan. Flame then transforms into his tank mode and attacks Zaran. Zaran is unarmed and needs to transform to fight back, but guess what? Zaran has not transformed in hundreds of years. With the Wrecker's jailbreak successful, they go and find Ultra Magnus and company. The door to the engine room is sealed, and Springer and Broadside go to find some heavy weapons, but instead encounter Trypticon. Yes, the Decepticon city Trypticon is now in the base. What does that mean? We'll find out in issue 169, Meltdown Part 2. This one has the same creative team, with the exception of letters, this time by Glop instead of Glib. And we'll talk about Glop in just a second. And a cover by Jeff Anderson. Now, Glop is a gentleman by the name of Gordon Robeson. Robson, Marvel UK letterer on books such as 2000 AD and Judge Dredd, G.I. Joe, Action Force. He even lettered Sonic the Hedgehog in later years. And he's very active on social media. He has a blog spot, KidR77. That's KID letter R77 .blogspot.com. So, go check that out. The cover of 169 features Trypticon and Flywheels attacking a bunch of zombies, and Flywheels saying, "Let's party, Trypticon." And the story, though, starts with Zaran being under attack. He needs to transform. Transforming may actually kill him. We have only 2.5 breams. That's about 20 minutes, 20.8 minutes before the engines ignite, and we have a meltdown. Zaran tries to convince Flame to stop. Flame realizes he can still make some adjustments. Elsewhere, the Wreckers are trying to take out the door when Trypticon arrives. Trypticon is Flywheels' backup, as indicated by the cover. They knock the door down, and Ultra Magnus grabs Flame and knocks him out. The Wreckers can't stop the meltdown, though, and Flame wakes up and radios some more zombies. Zaran then prepares to sacrifice himself to stop the engines by going into the engine room and somehow stopping the meltdown. Flame is about to stop him and then takes a harpoon to the head. The harpoon is attached to the arm of Zombie Impactor. Impactor remembers a bit of who he is, and he tells Zaran that he will take his place. He enters the reactor to take the place of Zaran and sacrifices himself to save Cybertron. The end. So Zaran saved twice now by Impactor. Impactor sacrificing himself twice. This is why the legend of Impactor has grown over 40 years of Transformers lore, because of stories like this. And so a character that wouldn't get a figure officially until the mid-2010s as part of the War for Cybertron series, and then an accurate-looking figure until the late 2010s, early 2020s, is a fantastic part of his story. So if you've ever wondered about Impactor, this is definitely a series of stories that are very, very important to the character. Plus, if you were ever wondering about Flame and Zaran that just had toys come out, again, this is a very important pair of stories for the characters. Zaran will have a bit more to do later on in the Marvel US series, so we will see more of him. Do we see more of Flame? I don't know, because this is all kind of new to me. Part of why I do this podcast, and I've told you this before, long-time listeners, is for me to explore these stories I've never experienced. And that is this set of Marvel UK stories is among them. So before we move on, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and do a couple more stories from this incredible portion of the Marvel UK continuity.
Hey, want to help out this podcast or the website TFU.INFO? There's a number of ways you can do it. Let me tell you how. You can help us directly by joining our Patreon and enrolling as a student at Transformers University. There, you'll get early access to the podcast as well as exclusive behind-the-scenes peeks and perks for as little as $1 a month. Sign up is quick and easy. Just swing on by to www.patreon.com/TFU.INFO. Another way you can help us is by using our Amazon link, www.tfu.info/Amazon. Type that into your browser whenever you want to shop at Amazon, and a portion of what you spend will be contributed back to us. It's that easy. Finally, you don't become the world's longest running transforming toy archive without some help from other fans. We're always on the hunt for photos of figures and accessories we're missing from our pages. If you'd like to contribute, go to tfu.info/help for a list of what we need, or send an email to info@tfu.info. tfu.info, the Alpha Trion and Omega Prime of transforming toys. Now, back to the show.
And we're back, and we're going to return with issue number 170, Deadly Games Part 1. A lot of familiar faces on the creative team here. Written by Simon Furman, art by Dan Reed, letters by Glib, and colors with a U by Ewan Peters. Cover here by Jeff Anderson.
Man goes into cage, cage goes into salsa. Shark's into salsa. Our shark.
Which has a reptile guy with a knife. And reflected in the knife are Ultra Magnus and the Sparklers. We find out about the state games, which take place at Jekka Amphitheater. These are gladiator fights, and this is in the quadrant of Tyrest. There's a large semi-organic bot named Hooligan.
Yesterday, some hooligans knocked over a dustbin in Shaftesbury.
Who is fighting an Autobot named Chameleon. Chameleon uses his powers to blend in, but Hooligan figures out what it is and swings where he thinks he might be and severs Chameleon's arm. Chameleon then tries to transform and converts to car mode, but it's too painful and he has to transform back. This is really, I wrote in my notes, interesting. This is, I think, like the first time I've ever really seen this where an Autobot is had some sort of extreme bodily damage and still tried to transform and also successfully did it but couldn't maintain it. Hooligan has him and appeals to the Lord of the Games as to what to do. Thumbs up, thumbs down. The result is thumbs down, and Hooligan kills Chameleon. And Chameleon is off to the dustbin in Shaftesbury.
The hooligans are loose, the hooligans are loose. What if they become ruffians?
Next day at Jekka Amphitheater, Ultra Magnus and the Sparklers are following up on Chameleon's report. Ultra Magnus was planning to go to Earth with the Wreckers when the patrol found Chameleon's body. They figured they had a little bit of time, so they go check out the amphitheater, and inside, the Autobots find body parts and remains, including Chameleon's arm. They get attacked by Firecons in a rare appearance in robot mode, and an alien named Zabra. This alien is also known for making hummus. Zabra defeats Ultra Magnus, and we go to the next issue. Issue number 171, Deadly Games Part 2, same creative team. And it features a cover by Jerry Paris with Ultra Magnus bloodied in front of a poster talking about the matchup versus Hooligan, and it mentions that Hooligan is from the planet Mil-Wal. Now, Mil-Wal FC, Mil-Wal Football Club, is a football team in the UK, or soccer, as we call it here in the United States. And they are known for their fans being hooligans. I believe they chant something to the effect of, "No one likes us and we don't care." So if you've ever heard a thing or two about soccer hooligans, you know it's going to be a tough time for Ultra Magnus.
I would hate to be a dustbin in Shaftesbury tonight. No one knows what it's like to be a dustbin in Shaftesbury with Hooligan.
Now, this features lots of aliens and generics entering the Jekka Amphitheater. There's a guy with a giant organic brain and a big Decepticon symbol on it, and he's buying souvenirs. He really wants to buy a used foot. Poorly disguised fetish aside, the wiki has a name for this guy, and it is Hideous Giant Brain Guy, who eventually shows up in the Transformers animated universe as a Easter egg in a fictitious video game. I know that sounds pretty roundabout, but that's pretty much par for the course for animated. Now, Zabra breaks out the pita chips and taunts the imprisoned Ultra Magnus as he's led to fight Hooligan. After he leaves, the Sparklers infight within their cell. The guard goes to check on them, and they knock the guard out to take his keys. It's a nice little ruse they set up there.
I don't think your manager would appreciate
I don't
it.
appreciate your ruse, ma'am.
I beg your pardon?
Your ruse, your cunning attempt to trick me.
In the arena, Ultra Magnus tries to appeal to Hooligan's better angels, noting that he is being exploited. Turns out, Hooligan likes to fight. Sparklers are then faced with a choice as they leave their prison cell: leave Ultra Magnus and meet up with the Wreckers to get back to Earth on a rare portal that is, very tightly timed, or save Ultra Magnus. Ultra Magnus realizes he doesn't need to hold back anymore and defeats Hooligan, but decides not to kill him. Instead, he goes and attacks Zabra in his owner's box up above the crowd. Zabra's guards are about to fire, and then they get shot by the Sparklers. Ultra Magnus then defeats Zabra and breaks up the games, and none of these Autobots are going to Earth. The end. And that will wrap up that tale. And it's interesting because this is actually the last time we will see present-day Ultra Magnus in these stories, which makes me wonder how Flywheels will get his payback, because I guess that's a loose and hanging thread, because according to TF we will not see modern-day Ultra Magnus. We will see future Ultra Magnus, but not modern-day Ultra Magnus anymore in the Marvel UK run. Now this brings us to the final 2 issues we are covering in this episode, and that is issue 172, Wrecking Havoc Part 1. And I wonder if it's Wreaking Havoc or Wrecking Havoc, but since it's the Wreckers, I'm going Wrecking Havoc, and since it's British, it probably has that too. So, another team of fairly familiar names, all people we've talked about before. Written by Simon Furman, art by Brian Hitch, letters by Stephen Parkhouse, colors with a U by Ewan Peters, and a cover by Jerry Paris, where Scourge and Cyclonus are blowing it up an F-14, which is exactly how the story starts. Scourge and Cyclonus now have their Nebulans, but they are still the Scourge and Cyclonus from the future that have traveled back in time. They are shooting up F-14s and blowing them up. The Wreckers decide to go to Earth without Ultra Magnus, and at Decepticon headquarters, Shockwave mulls over his alliance with Cyclonus and Scourge. He's only using them to take out Galvatron. And with this, the Scourge and Cyclonus lure Galvatron into a busy city street. They use their target masters to attempt to steal his time-hopping device, the time jump trigger mechanism. But Galvatron no longer has it. It was destroyed by Wreck-Gar, and he does not let on that he does not have it. And just then, the Wreckers arrive through the portal, which takes us to the final issue we will cover this time around, issue number 173, Wrecking Havoc, Part 2. Same crew here with the exception of the letterer. The letterer this time, Annie, half a Cree, half a Skrull. Cover by Jeff Anderson.
You're a cigarette.
Which features a unique Transformers collaborative of Galvatron cross Kool-Aid Man. It's basically Galvatron breaking through a brick wall. He doesn't go, oh yeah, but he should. And this story starts out with a big battle scene. I mean, a big chunk of this issue is the Wreckers battling it out with the Decepticons in the city. And in the process, to get away from the collateral damage this sort of fight would cause, Springer lures the Decepticons away using his springing ability once again, claiming that he already has the time device trigger and orders the Wreckers to retreat. Now, the Autobots have a decision to make, aren't named Springer. Do they take on Galvatron, or do they go and assist Springer, who's now got to fight Scourge and Cyclonus by himself? They decide to go and help Springer. Scourge and Cyclonus, though, have fallen for the ruse, realize that Springer does not have the device, and flees. And the Wreckers end this story by declaring to find Galvatron. And that is the end of the story of this part of the run. And before we get into my final thoughts on this episode, one thing to note in here, big advertisement for Pretenders in this issue, which is very strange to me because I spent the whole European Toy issue episode of this podcast talking about how the Pretenders haven't been confirmed to have been released in the UK, according to TF Wiki. So, make of that what you will. Now, some overall notes. These are, like I said, some top-notch Marvel UK stories. These are good ones just to hop in if you don't know anything about Marvel UK, because they're all pretty self-contained. They're all really straightforward. The things that need flashbacks have them. Anything that needs clarification, like Impactor's death, it's in there. They explain it, and so it'll have enough weight and enough force for you to enjoy. Not that I haven't given away everything in this episode. Flame and Zaron, again, just a year ago, no one knew who these guys really were, especially Flame. Zaron was a little bit more of a celebrity in terms of being known to probably not the most diehard Transformers fans, but something a little more than casual Transformers fans, especially if you've read the Marvel U.S. comic run. And yes, once again, my other note here says, last time we see present-day Ultra Magnus. So, yeah, Ultra Magnus will come back, but he will not be the same Ultra Magnus. And so we'll get into that when we get to those stories. And that will wrap things up for this episode of Transformers University. Want to find out what we're talking about in our next episode, episode 155? You'll just have to stick around after this.
Thanks for listening to the show. Stick around to hear what's coming up next episode, but first, I want to fill you in on a few ways you can stay in touch with the show. Want to be on the show? Leave us a voicemail at 702-763-4838. That's 702-POD-4TFU. Or send an email to info@tfu.info. Be sure to catch us on Twitter at TFU_info and on Facebook and Instagram under the username TFU.INFO, all one word. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TFU.INFO, where we post all of our podcasts, plus special video segments, reviews, and live coverage of Transformers-related events such as New York Toy Fair and New York Comic Con. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please visit us at www.tfu.info, the world's longest-running transforming toy archive.
And once again, I want to thank you for joining me on Transformers University. Love talking about Marvel UK comics. They are so much fun. They are so they're the right kind of nostalgia for me right now. They're stories that feature characters I don't really have much knowledge of or attachment to, and they're making me knowledgeable and attached to them. So great job by Simon Furman creating these classic tales, and all the artists and everyone else involved on those creative teams. Next time on the show, we're going to go back to Japan. To do another 3 episodes of Super God Master Force. We're chugging right along. We'll do episodes 13, 14, and 15 next time around. Another major character revealed by the end of those 3, and we'll have it right here on Transformers University. Until then, once again, if you want to catch up with me, patreon.com/TFU.INFO, TFUinfo.bsky.social, come hang out and read all sorts of silly things I might post, like a $400,000 Transformer auction. Yeah, no, I didn't make that up. You got to check it out on my Blue Sky. And of course, there is always the website, www.tfu.info, world's longest running transforming toy archive. Until next time, I am your host, Anthony Brutali, owner, operator, bad man behind TFU.info. See ya.
Transformers University, brought to you by TFU.INFO. Where the stories unfold, the legends grow with the owner, Maria Lambert, Anthony Brutali. It's the place to be. It's the place to be. Tune in, transform and roll out with us at Transformers University. It's a must.
And with this, the Scourge and Cyclonus lure Galvatron into a busy city street. They use their transmetals to attempt... 3, 2, transmetals. 3, 2.